Centre counter, side 1. The centre counter has become popular recently due to a win by Larsen over the world champion Karpov, and also because if black survives the opening, he has no disadvantages. He's got a fair amount of space and no pawn weaknesses. The disadvantage that the centre counter has is that white obtains a lead in development, which sometimes can be fatal. After e4, d5 to e takes d5, black has a choice of moves. He can play knight f6 or queen takes d5. Knight f6 has been favoured in the past, but I think it's inferior to queen takes d5, which seems quite strange, because queen takes d5 immediately loses the tempo to knight c3, whereas knight f6 seems very economical. But in fact this is the case. So first of all I'll look at 2 knight f6. Now white has a choice. He can either play bishop b5 check or c4, or he can play simply knight f3 or d4. So first of all let's look at bishop b5 check. Now if black plays knight bd7, he has some problems getting the pawn back. So he plays bishop d7, white plays bishop c4, now black plays bishop g4, white plays f3, black plays bishop f5, white plays knight c3, black plays knight bd7, white plays queen e2, black plays knight b6, now white plays bishop to b3. Now black can't immediately regain the pawn by knight f takes d5 or knight b takes d5, because if knight takes d5, knight takes d5, queen b5 check, followed by queen takes b7. So he first plays queen d7 and is now threatening to take the pawn back with advantage. So white plays the move d6. Now if black recaptures with the c pawn, then white plays a4, threatening a5 and bishop a4 with the winning advantage. So black would have to reply a5 in reply, but then his knight on b6 is very loose. So black takes back with the queen, queen takes d6. White plays knight b5, black plays queen d7. White plays queen e5, threatening knight takes c7 check. Now the best move for black is castles queenside. White takes, knight takes a7 check. Black plays king b8 and white goes back, knight b5. Now black plays knight f6 to d5, attacking the knight on b5. Now the best move is for white a4, defending the knight. And now theory gives f6 as black's next move, followed by queen e2, knight f4, queen f2, and white's consolidated his pawn. But a better move, in fact, is e6. Since after e6, if white develops his knight by knight e2, then f6 leaves the white queen in a difficult position. After queen d4, e5, queen f2, black can play knight b4, and he's got a very strong position there, because if d3 he can sacrifice with bishop takes d3. And also if white retreats the queen immediately with queen e2, then knight b4 again is possible, followed up with d3 by white 16 d3, and then e5 is a strong move. So Black has sufficient compensation for the pawn in this line, and probably that's the reason why it hasn't been played very much, this bishop b5 check, which seems to in fact give black good chances. So now let's look at another move for white after 2 knight f6, the move 3d4. After 3d4, black recaptures, knight takes d5, white plays knight f3, black plays bishop g4, white plays bishop e2, black plays knight c6, white plays c4, black plays knight b6, white castles kingside, and black plays e6. Now white has several moves here. He can play bishop e3 or b3 or knight c3. Knight c3 is by far the best, and we'll look at the other two briefly first. After bishop e3, black plays bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, knight takes c4, bishop takes c6 check, b takes c6, queen a4, knight b6, queen takes c6 check, queen d7, queen takes d7 check, king takes d7. And in fact, black has slightly better chances in the endgame because of the weakness of white's d pawn. So bishop e3 is not particularly good. So back to diagram 1, white plays b3, which is very solid, just defending the c4 pawn. After bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, knight takes d4, bishop takes b7, rook b8, white has the move bishop e3, and now after rook takes b7, queen takes d4, queen takes d4, bishop takes d4, c5, bishop e3, bishop e7, knight c3. White's got a slightly better ending due to the slight weakness of black's queenside pawns. But this isn't too drastic for black, and he probably can just about hold the draw. Back to diagram 1, let's look at the best move here, 8 knight c3, and this is by far the best move for white. Now if black tries to do the same manoeuvre as before, bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, knight takes c4, he gets splattered by d5. After d5, e takes d5, rook e1 check, bishop e7, knight takes d5, knight to d6. Black's got a terrible position, because now white can pile on the pressure with bishop f4, and after castle's kingside he can win the pawn back immediately with 14, knight takes c7 check, knight takes c7, bishop takes b7, and if knight takes b7 then queen takes d8 followed by rook takes e7. Alternatively, he can play rook c1 and just pile up the pressure, relying on his two bishops, and certainly this won't be very much fun for black. Now, I had this line played against me by Jack Peters, the American IM, and on move 8, instead of bishop takes f3, he played the move bishop to b4. After 9 d5 knight e7, I played the move d takes e6, but switch off the tape and see what you'd play here as white. In fact, there are lots of good moves here for white, apart from giving away most of your advantage with d takes e6. A good move here is queen b3, and then black's in real trouble because after queen b3 his bishop is very badly placed, and after a5 white goes rook d1 with a powerful line up down the d file. Also possible is the move h3, the idea of after bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3. White will be threatening to play d takes e6, and if black captures on d5, then knight takes d5 will be very awkward for black. So either h3 or queen b3 would have given white a bigger advantage here. I played d takes e6. Peter's played bishop takes e6, and then I played queen b3. Black played knight c6, rook d1. Black played queen c8. Now I played knight d5, which gave away most of the opening advantage that white had. Instead, bishop f4 would have been very awkward for black, because now knight d5 threatens the pawn on c7. So 13 bishop f4 would have been very strong in this position, and black is very hard pressed. His best is probably to give up the two bishops immediately by bishop takes c3, queen takes c3 when white's got a clear advantage. But this shows the difficulties that black has in this line of the centre counter with 2 knight f6. He often gets rolled up in the centre by white's pawns. And now we're going to move on to look at the move 2 queen takes d5, which on the face of it looks bad, which in fact is almost equal for black. Now, after 2 queen takes d5, knight c3, black has a choice of moves here with the queen. Queen e5 check is bad because of bishop e2 developing yet another piece, and then white will play knight f3, again attacking the queen. Now, first of all, there's the move queen d8, which looks as though you're setting up the pieces for another game. But white can't get too much advantage against this, but I think it's slightly worse than a normal position, this, because black has great difficulties in developing any of his pieces quick enough to ward off white's threats if he plays queen d8. For instance, after d4, knight f6, bishop f4, white's got some threats of playing queen d2 and castling queenside, which make it very difficult for black to castle kingside, and this is very awkward for black, and it seems that black just doesn't have enough time to develop his pieces in this line after queen to d8. Another move is queen to d6, and we're going to have a look at a game with this move first. And this is a game Karpov-Lutikov, and Karpov makes this look very easy for white after queen d6. He played 4 d4, black played knight f6, white played knight f3, and now black decided he had to play a6, which seems like a mistake. It's true that after knight c6, white goes knight b5, which is very awkward because of queen d8, bishop f4, and then knight d5, white plays bishop g3. But I don't think a6 was really the best move here, and he should have developed a piece. Anyway, a6, and white played bishop e3, black played knight c6, white played queen d2. Now white's simply threatening to castle queenside, which will be disastrous for black if he simply tried to castle kingside. So instead he played the move bishop to g4. So switch off the tape and see what you'd play as white here. Well, Karpov in fact played a very cunning move, 9, 8, knight g5, so that if black castles queenside, he gets exposed to the triple fault, knight takes f7. But now black decided to play e5, which was met by d5 in reply. Black played knight b4, white played f3, black played bishop f5, and white played knight g to e4. Now already black's in a very awkward position. If he exchanges off on e4, white recaptures with the f-pawn, and then black's knight on b4 is threatened with immediate loss by a3. So the only move here is queen to d7. Now Karpov could exchange on f6 here, but then black has pressure on c2, which enables him to save his knight. So Karpov played the move 12 castles queenside, and now black's knight on b4 is looking very silly. And he's only got one move to save it, and that's c6. Now Karpov just played the simple d takes c6, and now black swapped queens. Queen takes d2 check, white recaptured with the rook, rook takes d2, and now white's got lots of threats. If black just recaptures the pawn, knight takes c6, then white can play knight d6 check, gaining the two bishops, or knight takes f6 check, doubling black's pawns. But black slightly panicked here and played the move bishop takes e4, giving up a precious bishop, allowing white to play knight takes e4, knight takes c6, knight takes f6 check, g takes f6. Now white's got the two bishops, and in addition black's pawn formation is shattered, and he went on to win the game very quickly by 17 bishop d3, castles queenside, 18 rook hd1, threatening bishop f5 check winning, king c7, 19 c3, black played h5, white played bishop f5, threatening rook d7 check, black swapped rooks, rook takes d2, rook takes d2. Now black played knight b8, which is a very strange move. If he plays bishop d6, then bishop b6 check is very strong. Knight b8 is to prevent white from playing rook d7 check, but even so it seems pretty disastrous. It's probably immediate loss for black anyway here, but knight b8 is very passive. Now white played h4, black played bishop h6, white played bishop takes h6, black played rook takes h6, now white played a4. Now the black knight is tied down to stopping rook d7 check, and the black rook can't do much either. Black played rook h8, white played b4, black played b6, now white played 26 b5, locks in the white knight, the black knight, and now after rook g8, king c2, a takes b5, a takes b5, rook e8, c4, black decided he might as well resign, since his knight can never move out, and white can just create a passed pawn quite easily. So queen d6 is not very promising, because on d6 the queen is exposed to moves such as knight b5, threatening it, and also gets in the way of black developing his king's bishop. So the only move for black is queen to a5. And it seems that white is already a long way ahead in development, and should cause black some problems. But in fact the queen on a5 is quite useful in some lines, pinning the knight on c3. Now white's got a choice here. He can play the immediate d4, or he can go knight f3, which is possible. I think to start off with, I'll look at games with the immediate d4. After d4, black normally plays knight to f6. And now white's got a choice of moves here. He can go bishop c4, or knight f3, or bishop d2. Bishop c4 is a very sharp line, as can be knight f3. But first of all, we'll have a look at the game Karpov Larsen from Montreal 79, where white played the move bishop d2 with the immediate threat of knight b5, which is very embarrassing for the black queen. Once it gets very badly placed on b6. But bishop d2 is slightly inaccurate, as Larsen showed. He played bishop g4. Now Karpov played bishop e2. Larsen captured, bishop takes e2. Now Karpov recaptured, knight c takes e2. Larsen played queen to b6. White played knight to f3. Now obviously taking the b2 pawn is very risky because the white rook penetrates to b7. So Larsen played knight bd7, stopping the white knight from going to e5. White castled. Black played e6. White played c4. Black played bishop e7. And white played b4. Now Larsen castled. White played a4, and at last the black queen's threatened by a5, which would be slightly embarrassing. So Larsen played c6, white played queen c2, black played queen c7. You notice all this time that Larsen's not worried by white's space advantage on the queen side rather, because he hasn't got any disadvantages, any weaknesses in his foundation. Also, he's got enough space for his pieces. The exchange of his queen's bishop has meant that he can place all his pawns on white squares, and his bishop can operate on black squares quite freely. After queen c2, queen c7, white played rook f to e1, black played b6, white played a5. Now black played, good move, rook f to b8. And we're going to stop looking at the game here because it's fairly equal, and Karpov in fact went wrong by over-pressing, and Larsen eventually won the game. But in fact the position is fairly equal if white swaps on b6, just leaving an open a file. White's space advantage isn't a decisive factor in the position, and black can establish footholds for his knights by playing moves such as b5 and c5. So back to diagram 2, we've seen that bishop d2 can be met very well by bishop g4, as in the Karpov-Larsen game. Now we'll have a look at the move knight to f3. Now black has a choice here. He obviously wants to develop his queen's bishop. Now he can either play bishop g4 or bishop f5. Now bishop g4 has always been recognized as the book move, but in fact it's bad. And bishop d5, bishop f5 was dismissed as a bad move, which rather gave the variation a bad name. The whole centre counter seemed to be bad because bishop g4 was bad, but it's only the fact that bishop f5 had been overlooked as a possibility which had ruled this out. And recently Larsen has shown that bishop f5 is perfectly playable, and this is why the variation has become popular again. Let's have a look at a recent game with bishop g4. To bishop g4, again Mestel Lane went bishop c4, c6, 7 h3, bishop h5, Now Mr. played 8 queen e2. Black played knight bd7. White played bishop d2. Now Black played a funny move here. He played bishop takes f3. White captured, queen takes f3. Black played queen b6. Now switch off it and see if you can find White's next move. White's threatened by queen takes d4 and queen takes b2. In fact, Mr. played 11 castles queenside. And Lane fell for the trap with queen takes d4. Now again, it would be useful to switch off and try and find White's next move. He in fact played 12 bishop takes f7 check, which must have shocked Lane. After king takes f7, bishop e3, if the black queen moves off the d file, White simply takes the knight on d7, and this is disaster for Black because the rook will quickly snaffle the b7 pawn, and also Black's king's very exposed. So after bishop e3, Black played knight e5, White played queen to g3, and now Black's got a very awkward predicament, and he played queen d6, giving up the queen for a rook, a minor piece in the pawn, after rook takes d6. But after e takes d6, bishop d4, White had a winning position. And I think bishop g4 is suspect because after h3, Black either has to immediately give up the two bishops or play bishop to h5, and then his bishop can be attacked by g4 and White can follow up with a quick knight e5. Back to diagram 2. After 5 knight f3, bishop f5, we'll have a look at one of the early Larsen games where he came to grief against Spassky. After bishop 6 bishop d2, he played knight bd7, and this is a mistake, which it wasn't immediately obvious at the time. Because after bishop c4, White's threatening knight d5, which is very embarrassing, so Black has to play c6. White plays queen e2. Now, bishop takes c2 isn't very good because of an eventual knight discovery, followed by bishop b4 at some point. And so Larsen decided, after queen e2, to play e6, because White was threatening to play knight e5, which would be a strong possibility. But after e6, he was thrown back by Spassky's next move. Switch off and see if you can find it. He played 9 d5. After c takes d5, knight takes d5, Black was in trouble. He played queen c5, and White played b4. Black played queen c8. White played knight takes f6 check. Now Black was forced to recapture with the g-pawn, because after knight takes f6, bishop b5 check, knight d7 is impossible because of knight e5 in reply. So he recaptured with the g-pawn, g takes f6, and White then played knight d4. Black played bishop g6, White played h4, Black played h5, White played f4. Already Black's having great problems defending his position. Black played bishop e7. Now Spassky brought a rook into the attack, 16 rook h3. And now Black's got great problems because of all White's threats of f5 and rook c3 and taking on e6 followed by a rook move. And Larsen lost the game very quickly. But after this, he'd improved the move order considerably, and we're going to have a look at this now. Yeah. Back to diagram 2. After knight f3, bishop f5, 6, bishop d2, black should play c6, the immediate c6, and not spend a move on knight bd7. Now, this was played in the game Lubojevic against Qxd5, but black still had problems. White played bishop c4, threatening to play at some point knight d5 or d5. Black played e6. White played queen e2, and again bishop takes c2 is very risky because of a knight d5 possibility eventually. And now black played the move bishop b4, avoiding the mistake of knight bd7. And now, if white plays the move a3, black can try knight d5 because of the pin on the white a pawn. So white played 9 castles queenside. Now black went in for a very tactical sequence here. Played the move knight to d5. Now switch off and see what you would play as white here. Lubojevic played knight takes d5. Black recaptured on d2. Bishop takes d2 check. White took back with a knight. Knight takes d2. Black played c takes d5. Now the point of white's plan, 12 knight b3, gaining a tempo by attacking the queen. Now obviously queen takes a2 is forced because of if queen to d8, then bishop b5 check is slightly awkward, and other moves allow bishop takes d5. So Qxd5 played queen takes a2. White played bishop takes d5, threatening bishop b7. Black played knight c6. White played g4. Black played bishop g6. White captured, bishop takes c6 check. Black recaptured, b takes c6. White played f4, 16 f4. Black castled. White played h4, black played h6. White played 18 h5. Black played bishop h7. White went g5. Black played bishop f5. White took on h6. Black recaptured on h6. Now, white won this game eventually with a knight v bishop endgame, in which he was able to pick off the queenside pawns with the knight, and all the major pieces were exchanged along the g-file. But theory says that white's only slightly better in this position, but I don't quite agree. I think white's a lot better because black's chances are very small. White's got tremendous threats down the g-file, and black has to swap off all his rooks in order to defend against these. And white's queen and knight combine much better than black's queen and bishop. So I think this position isn't particularly satisfactory for black. So go now to diagram 3. I reached this position as white in a tournament in Denmark against Niels Jorn Friis Nielsen. I remembered the game Lubojevic Qxd5, and I was wondering what he would do. if I castled queenside here. And it occurred to me at the time that there's no need, in fact, for black after castles queenside to play the move knight d5. He can simply play knight b to d7 with a good game, as I'll show you why later. If white plays a3, black can simply exchange on c3 and then follow up with queen c7. So in the game I castled kingside, and my opponent still played knight b d7, which I thought was quite strange at the time, allowing me to gain the two bishops by a3. But after bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3, queen c7, the bishop isn't very well placed on c3, and I'll illustrate this later in the game Watson against Taulbut. So, as we can see, after 9 castles queenside, there's no need for black to go into this knight d5 line, but just knight b d7 is a good move for black. And from this position, I want to illustrate some of the possibilities for black. If white instead plays the move 9 bishop b3 instead of castling queenside, we're following a game Hackey against Taulbut, Trondheim 81. Black played knight b d7. Now white could find nothing better than move knight b1, which is fine if black captures on d2, because then the white knight will come back into play via c4 and e3. But black castled, and after c3, bishop d6, c4, bishop to b4, a3, bishop takes d2 check, queen takes d2, queen b6, 15, queen b4, queen c7, 16, knight b d2, c5, black has a clear advantage. And I think in the position in diagram 3, white's best move is in fact to castle kingside, as I did in the game against Fries Nielsen. Castling queenside is very dangerous for white because black has got a ready-made attack. Back to diagram 2. After knight f3, bishop f5, bishop d2, c6. Again, Watson, Taulbut, Brighton 1980 went bishop c4, e6. And now white castled kingside immediately. And black played the move bishop b4. Now, it looks superficially that after 9a3, white's going to get a clear advantage. But in fact, this isn't the case. After 9a3, bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3, queen c7. White's got the two bishops, but they don't mean very much in this position. Black's one bishop is very well placed outside the pawn chain, and also white can only drive it away by weakening his own position. In addition, the bishops on c4 and c3 block the move that white wants to play, c4, and therefore white has to waste a lot of time in order to get them out of the way. And also, white can't take advantage of black's weakness on the black squares by playing bishop b4 because of a5. So after queen c7, Watson played the move b3. I castled kingside. White played bishop b2. Now I played here a5. Obviously black wants, if he can, to play a4, and then, if allowed, he can follow up by playing b5 and that's if white replies b4 and create some kind of outpost on d5 or c4. Anyway, Watson decided to prevent this with 13a4. I played knight b to d7. White played h3. And now switch off and see if you can find black's next move. Black in fact played b5. And white captured, a takes b5. Black recaptured, c takes b5. And now if bishop takes b5, then black can play queen takes c2 with a good position. So white has to play bishop d3. Black captured, bishop takes d3, white recaptured, queen takes d3. Now black played b4. Now white now has to play the move c4. Black takes, b takes c3, white recaptured, bishop takes c3, and black's got a slight advantage because of a strong outpost for his knight on d5. And he in fact played the move h6, which is a slight waste of time, and he should immediately get on with the blockade of d5. So now from diagram 4, another game, Shaun Taulbut, ARC Young Masters, went instead of b3, bishop d2, and this was a similar plan to that used by me in the game against Fries Nielsen. I redeveloped the bishop round to g5 and then to h4 and g3. But by this time, black had managed to force me to swap off my white squared bishop for his white squared bishop, and then I didn't have much advantage with only one bishop. After 11 bishop d2, I played knight b d7 against Kinley, and he played bishop a2, again with the idea of playing c4. But after castle's kingside, he was very worried about c4 allowing the possibility of black playing c5 at some point, and therefore played a very risky move, 13b4. Black played rook a to d8. White played rook e1. Now black played knight to e4. White played 15 c4. Black played knight d to f6. White played h3. Black played h6. White went queen c1. Black played knight takes d2. White played queen takes d2. Now black played a good move, bishop e4. Now white's got a very difficult choice here. He in fact played the move 19 rook a to d1, which allowed bishop takes f3 with a clear advantage for black. But after knight e5, queen takes e5, d takes e5, rook takes d2, e takes f6, black can play the move bishop c2, locking in white's pieces on the queen side, and then black has a big advantage in the endgame. But after rook a d1, bishop takes f3, g takes f3. White had some chances down the open g file, but eventually lost. These examples show how, in fact, this maneuver by black of playing bishop b4 and then allowing his king's bishop to be swapped off for the queen's knight is not as bad as it looks. White gains the two bishops, and it looks as though he's got complete control over the black squares. But in fact his position is very awkward, and in order to mobilize his queenside pawns, he has to spend several moves maneuvering his bishops, Meanwhile, black can develop his pieces, and since he has no weaknesses, he can play very confidently against the white centre, especially his d4 pawn. This is very noticeable in the centre counter that black often gets a lot of pressure down this semi-open d file against the white d4 pawn. This is the end of side 1. Please fast forward your tape to the end and then turn over for side 2. Now we're going to have a look at some other ideas for white. And first of all, we'll have a look at an idea Qxd5 played against me at New York, 1981. After e4, d5, e takes d5, queen takes d5, 3, knight c3, queen a5, 4, knight f3, knight f6. He further delayed playing d4 by playing 5, bishop c4, bishop f5, another move, 6, queen e2. Now I had some slight worries about this initially because if black plays e6, then white's going to play knight d4 and threatening the bishop, and there might be some terrible sacrifice on e6 coming up. And also, if black plays knight c6 to avoid this, white can simply transpose by playing d4 when the knight on c6 is very badly placed and black gets into trouble because of the position of his queen. But analysis revealed that white has no real threat after e6, but Qxd5 still played knight d4. And now I played the move c6. I was worried after bishop g6 that he might be able to get away with some sacrifice, but c6 is not the only move here. Black can also try another very interesting move, knight c6. This looks ridiculous at first sight. After knight takes c6, b takes c6, black's got quite a free position, and white can't in fact take immediate advantage of the doubled c-pawns. However, I think in time white will annex both of these c-pawns. Back to c6. Now Qxd5 played the move d3, and I decided to retreat the bishop g6. After knight takes e6, f takes e6, queen takes e6, check, bishop e7, white doesn't have any real attack because black can quickly swap off the queens with queen to f5. So Qxd5 castled, and I again let him have the chance to sacrifice on e6 by playing knight b d7. Then he played a3. I played queen to h5. White played b4. Black castled queenside. 12, queen takes h5, bishop takes h5, and a draw was agreed here. I think in fact that black's slightly better because white's got some slight weaknesses on the queen side, and black can play the simple knight b6 and knight b to d5 with a good game. So this idea of delaying d4 in order to attack the black bishop on f5 by playing knight f3 to d4 doesn't seem a serious threat to black. So back to diagram 2. After the moves knight f3, bishop f5, let's have a look at some other moves for white. Now recommended is knight e5 with the threat of knight c4, which is very awkward, trapping the black queen. Black plays c6 and then white plays g4. This was meant to give white the advantage, but after bishop e6, black is at least an equal game, and it's strange that theory overlooked this. In fact, the line knight e5, c6, g4, bishop e6 is very sharp. White can play bishop g2 and then black plays knight b to d7, but none of white's threats are very good, really. After a time they fizzle out, and a game in Denmark, Mortensen against Niels Jornfries Nielsen, was agreed to draw fairly quickly in this line, whereas theory always held it to be much better for white. And this was one of the reasons why bishop f5 was neglected. I had one game where white played bishop b5 check here. I played c6 and my opponent went bishop d3. Now this is very similar to the lines where white plays bishop d3 immediately, but black has the advantage already of playing c6. In the game Freeman Taulbut, black continued e6, white castled kingside. Black played knight b d7, white played knight e2, black played bishop g4, white played knight g3, black played bishop d6, white played h3, black took, bishop takes f3, white queen takes f3, black castled, white knight e4, black knight takes e4, white queen takes e4, black knight f6, white queen h4. Now I equalised with 15 queen h5. After the queens were exchanged, black had a fairly good game because his knight was threatening to come to f4, and he has some possibilities of attacking the white d pawn. And this was a fairly standard equalising line for black in such positions, by playing bishop g4 and then swapping off some of the minor pieces. But let's now have a look at an important move for white, 6 bishop d3. Bishop d3 is a good move for white, probably the strongest available, and the reason for this is black's queen is very awkwardly tied to defending the f5 bishop. Can always be deflected by moves such as b4, and if black captures on d3, the white queen comes to d3, and it's quite well placed there. And also, if white plays a later knight e5, this cuts off the line of the queen and bishop, so it's slightly awkward for black. Now normal is e6. Now after e6, let's have a look at some examples. The best move for white is 7 castles kingside, but a game Ball against Larsen bled went bishop takes f5, queen takes f5, knight e5, threatening g4. Larsen played h5, white castle, black played knight b d7, white played queen e2, threatening queen b5, black played a6, white played f4, black played rook d8, white played rook f3, black played knight b6, white played rook g3, black played knight b d5, white took, knight takes d5. Larsen
can recapture with the knight, knight takes d5. And already black's got a reasonable position, because white's f4 pawn is very weak, and Larsen duly went on to win the game. But as I said before, strongest for white is 7 castles kingside. So back to diagram 2. After 5 knight f3, bishop f5, 6, bishop d3, e6, 7 castles. Now, I've never really known what the best move here is, but I discovered it by accident. Against Hall in the ARC Young Masters, I played bishop b4 here, and after white played knight e2, I tried to repeat my game against Freeman by playing bishop g4, only to be shocked on move 9 when he played knight e5, which I hadn't even considered, getting a very strong position. I had to play c6 in order to avoid getting my queen very badly placed. White played f3, 10 f3, black played bishop h5, white played 11 knight f4, black went bishop g6, white played knight f takes g6, black recaptured h takes g6, and white's got the advantage here because of his strong knight on e5. And this shows black has to be very careful in this line, because he can get into awful trouble if he just makes one or two moves which don't quite fit together. In fact, after 7 castles, the best move is knight bd7, preventing white from playing knight to e5 at any point. Now a game Danstrup Larsen continued 8 rook e1, and then black played bishop to b4, and now white played the move 9 bishop f4, which Larsen thinks was a mistake. I had a very similar game like this, which I'll comment on in a moment. But bishop b4, white should probably sacrifice, well, it isn't a sacrifice in fact, but immediate play knight e5, and then black has to capture on d3 with the bishop, and then white can recapture with the queen. And then even though white gets doubled pawns, he's got some possibilities of playing c4 and following up with d5. So I think this is quite reasonable for white. But Danstrup played bishop f4, and Larsen simply castled on the king side. After 10 knight e5, bishop takes c3, b takes c3, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3, rook a d8, rook a b1, knight to d5, bishop d2, knight takes e5, rook takes e5, queen takes a2, rook takes b7, c5, h3, c4, queen g3, queen takes c2, bishop e1, a5. Black had a winning advantage due to his very strong passed a pawn. But I hadn't seen this game when I played against Mark Hebden Stroud, and we both committed some slight inaccuracies. Back to diagram 2. After 5 knight f3, bishop f5, bishop d3, e6, 7 castles, knight bd7. Mark played bishop f4, and I played c6. After rook e1, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3, bishop b4, white played knight e5. And now bishop takes c3 is very bad because of knight c4, when black has some problems because of knight d6 check. So I had to castle kingside, which is different from the Bent Larsen game, and Mark played rook e3 with obvious threats of playing rook g3 or rook h3. So now I played knight takes e5. Now if white plays d takes e5, then rook a8 is good, driving the queen off the d3 to h7 diagonal. And bishop takes e5 allows knight g4, rook h3, f5, and surprisingly the white pieces are very badly placed. The bishop's threatened, and also if it moves then the white rook is going to be very badly placed on h3. So naturally white didn't go in for this line, but played rook takes e5. Then black retreated, queen d8. White played bishop g5. Black played bishop e7. And this move contains a cunning threat. Switch off and see if you can find white's next move. In fact, white played rook e3. If he plays the natural rook ae1, then knight d7, bishop takes e7, knight takes e5 wins the exchange after bishop takes d8, knight takes d3, again attacking the rook on e1. White saw this and played rook e3. After knight g4, bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, rook e2, rook ad8, 18 rook ad1. Black already had a slight advantage because of his pressure against the d4 pawn. In fact, black missed an opportunity later on to gain a big advantage, and the game was drawn. But this shows the advantages of this system. As long as black survives the opening phase, then he can look forward to having some pressure against white's d-pawn in the middle game, with having a solid position himself and no weaknesses. Back to diagram 2. After 5 bishop c4, bishop f5, white can also play knight ge2, played against me by Taylor at the City of London. After e6, castles, knight bd7, bishop b3, c6, knight g3, bishop g6, rook e1. I again played bishop b4 with the same ideas as in the Watson and Kinlay games. After 11 bishop d2, castles on the king's side, 12 queen f3, knight d5, 13 rook ad1, knight takes c3, 14 b takes c3, bishop d6. Black had a positional advantage because of the weakness of the double pawns, and went on to win. And this idea of playing bishop b4 is again very useful. Now we're going to have a look at some illustrative games. I've chosen 2 games that I played in the Politiken Cup in Denmark, both against grandmasters. Both of these games are fairly typical games for this queen takes d5 line of the centre counter. The first game I'm going to look at is the one I played against Radulov, the Bulgarian grandmaster. So set up the pieces in the initial position. After 1 e4 d5, 2 e takes d5, queen takes d5, 3 knight c3, queen a5, 4 d4, knight f6,
5 knight f3. I played the move that I recommended on this tape, bishop f5. This has been championed by Bent Larsen, the Danish Grandmaster, and also it's been recently taken up by the Yugoslav Grandmaster Qxd5. Now Radulov chose on move 6, bishop d3. Now this is a fairly good move for white, but it doesn't pose any special problems for black. His only problem is to worry about the defense of his bishop on f5, because his queen might get deflected away from protecting it, and this would be very awkward. So on move 6 I played e6. Radulov now castled, 7 castles. Now I played move knight b to d7. This is better than developing the king's bishop, because black's not sure where he wants to develop his king's bishop. He can develop it either on e7 or b4. If white now played the move 8 rook e1, then a good move for black would be bishop b4 with a useful pin on white's queen's knight. So white does not want to play rook e1, and Radulov chose the move 8 bishop f4. Now switch off the tape and see what you'd play as black here. Well, I played the move c6, hc6. Also possible was 8 bishop d6, immediately challenging the white bishop. But this is slightly worse than c6. After 8 bishop d6, white plays 9 bishop takes d6, black recaptures c takes d6, then white plays 10 knight b5. Black has to play bishop takes d3, white recaptures with the queen, queen takes d3. Now black has to defend the d6 pawn by queen b6, and then white follows up with c4, and he's got a slight advantage here. So I played the move c6, which is very useful in giving the queen a retreat square, and also overprotects the d5 square, so white cannot really ever think of playing d5 himself. After c6, Radulov chose the move 9a3. He'd like to play 9 rook e1, but then again, bishop b4 is very useful for black. So he played the move 9a3, which threatens to play b4, which is slightly embarrassing for black. So now I was forced to swap off the bishops. 9 bishop takes d3, and Radulov recaptured queen takes d3. Now let's have a look at this position. White's ahead in development. He's already developed all his pieces and castled, whereas black's still got to develop his king's bishop and castle as well. So it looks slightly dangerous for black, but in fact this position is quite safe for black because he's got no weaknesses. In addition, white doesn't have a big space advantage on either side of the board. Black's got a sufficient amount of space for his pieces, and eventually black can use the half-open d file to pile up pressure against white's d pawn. So I think already black's got good chances of equality in this position. Now I played a simple move, 10 bishop e7, and Radulov decided to play the move 11 knight e4. He wants to get his queenside pawns moving with c4 and then possibly b4 later. And also his knight on c3 isn't very well placed. After 11 knight e4, switch off the tape and see what you'd play as black here. I played knight takes e4. Very simple idea, just gaining time to move the queen knight to a better square. After 12 queen takes e4, I played knight to f6. Now Radulov played 13 queen e2. And now, instead of castling immediately, which allows white to play knight e5, I played the move queen to f5, attacking the white bishop. And this is a useful move because black can often threaten to exchange the queens by queen e4, and also can possibly play knight e4 at some point. So after queen to f5, Radulov retreated his bishop, 14 bishop g3. Black castled kingside. Now white played the move 15 rook a to d1. Black played rook a to d8. And now we see black's plan. He's going to pile up as much pressure as he can on white's d-pawn, and then at some point he's going to play c5. And if white captures, recapture with a bishop, and then the position will be fairly equal. Now white probably should play a move such as c3 here, but he made a slight mistake here. He played the move 16 rook d3. Now switch off the tape and see what you'd play as black here. In fact, black played a good move here, 16 queen to b5. This surprising move puts white in a lot of trouble because the pin on his rook is very awkward. Now white's best tries to play the move c3, protecting his b2 pawn and his d4 pawn, but this allows black to equalize immediately with the move c5 because white can't take because of the pinned rook. But Radulov instead made another mistake now. He played 17 knight e5. Now switch off the tape and see what you'd play as black here. I played the move rook takes d4. 17 rook takes d4. Queen takes b2 is very risky for black, but rook takes d4 simply wins a pawn. After rook takes d4, Radulov played 18 c4. Black played 18 queen b6. White captured, rook takes d4. Black recaptured, queen takes d4. Now white played 20 rook d1. Now black played the move queen to e4. 20 queen e4. Now if white captures, queen takes e4, knight takes e4, and then invades on the 7th rank with rook d7, black can simply play rook d8 because rook takes e7 is impossible because of mate on the back rank. So it turns out in fact that white can't use the open d file at the moment. So he played the move 21 queen d2, and black played the move h6. Now black's threatening to play rook to d8, which would be very awkward for white now that he's got a flight square for his king. So Radulov played rook to e1, and black played rook d8 anyway, 22 rook d8. If white swaps off, queen takes d8 check, bishop takes d8, rook takes e4, knight takes e4. Black's got a much better position because white's minor pieces are slightly awkwardly placed, in addition to the pawn up. So Radulov played a risky move, 23 queen a5. Now this looks slightly awkward for black because the a pawn is difficult to defend and white's also threatening queen c7. But black has a strong move here, so switch off the tape and see if you can find it. Black played 23 queen c2 with the big threat of rook d1, which is very difficult for white to defend against. So white had to make a flight square for his king with 24 h3. And now black swapped the queens by 24 queen d2. After 25 queen takes d2, rook takes d2, 26 b4, rook a2, 27 rook e3. Black played king to f8, moving his king over to the queen side. Now white played 28 rook d3 and black played 28 king e8. Now white decided to move his bishop to a better square and played 29 bishop f4, and I now continued with my plan, which looks quite risky at first sight, and I played 29 a5. Now switch off the tape and see if you can work out exactly what's going to happen here. White played 30 b takes a5, and black played rook a1 check. White played 31 king h2. Black played rook takes a3. White must capture, rook takes a3, bishop takes a3. Now switch off the tape and see what you'd play as white here. White should play a6, then after b takes a6, knight takes c6. Black's still got a clear advantage because his king's much closer and he's got an outside pass pawn. But Radulov thought he could play a tactical trick here and played 33 knight takes c6 with the idea of, if taking on c6, a6. But he'd overlooked something. After 33 knight takes c6, b takes c6, Radulov played a6. Now a7 is threatened, and if black plays bishop c5, then bishop e3 wins for white. After bishop takes e3, f takes e3, knight d7, c5, preventing the knight from going to b6. But black can play knight d7 immediately, and after 35 bishop e3, I played c5, and Radulov now resigned because he can't stop knight b6 when black stops the a pawn with a piece up. Now this was a fairly typical game for this opening and shows the potential of the opening. As long as black doesn't get into hot water in the opening, he's got a very safe position in the middle game with no disadvantage in space, and all his pieces are well placed. And he can play quite easily for a win in the later middle game and ending by pressure on white's queenside pawns. In the next round of the Political Cup, I had to face the Czech Grandmaster Jansa, and he knew that I was going to play the centre counter, but I couldn't think of anything else which I knew sufficiently well to play against him, so I repeated it, and he played one of the strongest lines I think available for white. Half the opening moves e4, d5, e takes d5, queen takes d5,
knight c3, queen a5, 4 d4, knight f6, 5 knight f3, bishop f5. He followed the plan chosen by Spassky against Larsen. He played bishop d2. I played c6, giving the queen an escape route. White played bishop c4. Black played e6. White played 8 queen e2. I played bishop b4, as I spoke about earlier on the tape. And now Jansa came up with a new move, which I'd never seen before, which in fact seems very strong. He played the move 9 knight e5. He'd played a tournament in Yugoslavia, Sarajevo, and in a game Sakis against Qxd5, Sakis had played the move 9a3, which leads to a fairly normal position after bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3, queen c7. Alternatively, black can ignore a3 at the moment because of the pin on the a-pawn and play bishop g4, which in fact is the way the game Sakis-Qxd5 went. But it was discovered that knight e5 seems quite strong for white, and Jansa duly played it against me. Now, black is in some difficulties over his queen's bishop on f5, because now white's threatening to play the move g4. Black can almost never play bishop takes c2 because of discovered attacks on his bishop when white's queen's bishop moves. So I had to do something about the threat of g4, and I played knight b to d7. Now this prevents g4 because of knight takes e5. But Jansa now castled queenside. And black's got some difficulties in knowing what to do here. Castling kingside seems very risky because white can probably launch an attack fairly quickly using the fact that g4 and g5 are going to attack black's pieces with gain of time. And black can't yet castle queenside, which is quite awkward. Now I played the move knight takes e5, and Jansa recaptured d takes e5, and now I made a mistake. On move 11 I played knight d7. I'd looked at knight d5 and rejected it because of bishop takes d5, and then c takes d5 is impossible because of queen b5 check, queen takes b5, knight takes b5 with advantage to white. And I'd only looked at e takes d5 a3, and I reckon that gave white the advantage. But in fact knight d5 is the best move. After bishop takes d5, e takes d5, a3, bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3, queen c7. White's got a slight advantage, but I looked at this with Jansa, and black should be able to maintain a reasonable position by castling queenside. And I think this is the correct way for black to play. But as I said, I made a slight mistake here, and instead of playing knight d5, I played the move knight d7, which looks very attractive at first sight because it's attacking the white e5 pawn. Jansa now played the move a3, and this is very awkward for black. Now switch off the tape and see what you'd play here as black. Well, if you played bishop takes c3, you'd get quickly crushed after bishop takes c3, queen to c7, and now bishop b4. Because of queen takes e5 is impossible because of rook takes d7, queen takes e2, rook e7 check, followed by bishop takes e2.
So after a3, bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3, queen c7, bishop b4, black's in trouble because of the threat of bishop d6. If he plays c5, then bishop b5 is very awkward. So I realised I couldn't play bishop takes c3, and I had to do something fairly active here just to stay in the game. I played the move 12b5. Now, if white captures on b4, a takes b4, black goes queen a1 check, knight b1, and then b takes c4. And he's got good chances here because he can castle quickly on the king side and then move all his pieces to attack white's king. But Jansa duly played bishop a2. This is better than bishop b3 because after bishop b3, black can play knight c5. And then after a takes b4, knight takes b3 check, c takes b3, queen b1, queen a1 check rather, knight b1, queen takes b1 is mate. So bishop a2 is better, preventing knight c5. And now black's in a difficult position here, and I decided I'd have to sacrifice here, and I played the move 13 bishop takes a3. Now white's got no discovered attacks here because knight d5 fails to a strange move b4, blocking the attack on the queen, and black's threatening to take the knight, and also he's threatening bishop takes b2 check and queen a3 check. And also after knight d5 b4, knight e3, defending the c2 point, fails to queen takes e5. So Jansa had to take the bishop, b takes a3, black recaptured, queen takes a3 check, and white played king b1. Now black's only got 2 pawns for the piece, but white's king's position rather, or his queen side, is really in a bit of a mess. Now it'd be really nice for black if he could play the move knight b6 immediately, followed by knight c4. But unfortunately after knight b6, knight takes b5 wins for white. After c takes b5, queen takes b5 check. And wherever the black king goes, the white queen bishop moves with devastating effect. So I had to castle kingside here. Jansa played bishop to c1. I played queen to b4 check. Jansa played bishop to b2, 17 bishop b2, and now I played knight to b6. And now black still has good chances here, good attacking chances, because white's pieces are all huddled together just defending the king. And Jansa played the move king a1, 18 king a1. Now switch off the tape and see what you'd play as black here. Now knight c4 is a mistake here, because white goes bishop takes c4, b takes c4, knight a2. And then white can move his queen over to the queen side by queen to e3, which is quite good for white. I played a good move here, rook to b8, maintaining the threat of knight c4 when white won't be able to play knight a2 afterwards. And white now has to play knight to b1, threatening bishop a3. Now black played knight c4, white played bishop c3, black played queen a4. Now switch off the tape and see what you'd play here as white. Black's threatening rook b6 to a6, followed by mate. So white's only got one defensive plan, and that's rook to d4. Black plays rook b6, and now white sacrifices the exchange back. Rook takes c4. Black recaptured, b takes c4. White captured with the queen, queen takes c4. Black took on c2, queen takes c2. Now white played a good move, bishop d4. Now the position is probably slightly better for white here already, but I played slightly inaccurately here. I played queen takes c4, bishop takes c4, and now I played the move rook to b4, which is very risky because the rook gets very badly placed on b4. Probably best here for black is rook takes b1 check, rook takes b1, bishop takes b1, king takes b1, and now c5, because bishop takes c5 is impossible because of rook c8, and black has 2 pawns in the exchange for the 2 pawns and a rook for the 2 bishops rather, with a very unclear ending. I played the move rook to b4, which looks very attractive at first sight. And Jansa played knight a3, which is very strong. So that by now both players were in some time trouble, and the remaining moves were very badly played by both sides. I played the move rook a4, and now Jansa should have played bishop to c5 on move 27, but instead he played king a2, which looks very strong because of the threat of king b3, which is going to be very awkward. Is followed by king b4 if the rook retreats to a5, trapping the rook. But bishop c5 is stronger. After king a2, I played rook b8, preventing king b3. Now again, white should play bishop c5, but he played the move bishop c3, preventing rook from b8 to b4. And now black has a good reply in bishop to e4 on move 28. Now switch off the tape and see what you'd play as white's here. He's in great difficulties here, and he should probably play another move than the one he did, because black has a nasty little threat in this position. Jansa played the move 29 f3. Switch off the tape and see what you'd play as black here. Black played rook takes c4. Now after knight takes c4, bishop d5, white was losing a piece back fairly easily, and now after 31 bishop d4, bishop takes c4 check, black's 2 pawns up, and even though there's opposite bishops, the rooks are going to ensure a win for black. Black duly won the game in 55 moves, and the remainder of the game will be in the booklet. And this was